My research project was over the U.S. foreign policy of entering World War I and the influence of public opinion throughout the war. Although this was not included in my analysis paper, just for background, World War I started in Europe because the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire was shot by a young Serbian patriot. This was during a time of conflict between Serbia and Austria. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was shot and killed while visiting in Sarajevo, Bosnia. Within a month after, the Austrian army invaded Serbia. Over a short period of time, other actors were involved. Historical background regarding the United States to enter. The United States officially entered the war on April 4, 1917, while the war started a few years prior on July 28, 1914. The United States, under Democratic President Woodrow Wilson, declared to be neutral in all parts, within a period of isolationism. The U.S. continued to trade, specifically with Britain. Britain was one of America's closest trading partners before and during the war. President Woodrow Wilson still allowed American products such as agriculture, manufactured goods, arms, and ammunition to be sold. The amount of exports caused a boom in the U.S. economy. Jobs were at a high and continued to grow, while the U.S. provided much of the needs for the Allied powers and Britain during the war. The Central Powers were financed by Germany, and from 1914 to 1916, the Allied powers were funded primarily by Great Britain, but because of the help of the United States. This changed from 1917 to 1918. Great Britain was starting to run out of money, so the United States began to finance the war completely. To fund the war, the United States government raised taxes and sold Liberty Bonds in 1917, but it was also an attempt to raise public morale in the war effort. Public opinion influence throughout World War I. This is where I took into consideration the IR theory of balance of power, which is the country trying to secure its survival by preventing one state from becoming too dominant. This can give a possible theory that the United States joined World War I to prevent one nation from completely dominating another and eventually spreading. My focus was on public opinion throughout World War I. Public opinion is the collective opinion on a specific topic or voting intention relevant to society. It is people's views on matters affecting them. Just a brief overview, the United States started with isolation and neutrality. The public supported this because the war happening in Europe was helping the economy of the states. Once events, not foreign policy decisions from other countries, began to threaten the national security of the United States, public opinion began to shift in anger. For example, events such as Germans seeking the merchant passenger ships, such as the Lusitania or the Zimmerman telegram sent to Mexico, these tactics scared the public and angered them. More support for the Allies began, and the people entered a period of excitement. Before wartime, and at the time the U.S. officially declared war, there was propaganda posters, film, and newspapers used to boost morale, nationalism, and patriotism. These posters and other forms of propaganda showed soldiers, men, women, and children helping in the war effort. It showed the importance of nationalism and community. There was a fear, but spirits were high. Overall, in my literature review, I found findings that showed the change in public opinion throughout wartime, but ultimately, my conclusions were as I predicted. Public opinion will shift and evolve throughout a war depending on their country's stance in the war. This leads to my analysis and conclusion. Public opinion did influence foreign policymakers in World War I, with great consideration in the balance of power theory. However, public opinion was influenced by events more so than decisions. As you can see, whether intentionally or not, the public knew they did not want either the Central Powers nor the Allied powers to become too powerful. Whether one side winning the war will actually lead to total dominance is up in the air, but the implied fear was enough for the public support the war effort. The three posters I have on my screen start with Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam was meant to encourage men to enlist in the military and to encourage civilian support for the entry of the United States into World War I. The caption reads, "I want you for the U.S. Army," and Uncle Sam is pointing directly at the viewer with a serious expression. As you can tell by his attire, it's meant to improve patriotism throughout the war. The next poster says, "Wake up America, civilization calls every man, woman, and child." This was meant to inspire unenthusiastic Americans reluctant to have their country join the fight. As it says, it literally calls every man, woman, and child, showing community and nationalism that every person is needed to fight the war effort. Last but not least, the poster, "Lend the way they fight. Buy bonds to your utmost. was meant to appeal to the working class Americans to support the war financially by buying bonds. Most of the sources during my research only stated how events affect the public, which impacted policymakers, not how policymakers' decision impacted the public. The lack of inclusion of other actors' perspective and natural bias also could have impacted my research. For instance, I only focused on the public opinion of the United States, not the perspective of the German fighters, men, women, or children, or Serbian individuals. These were all excluded and not taken into consideration.